Right side.
Hit play. Hello, this is Tom Szaky. I'm the founder and CEO of. Sorry, there's a little bit of an echo here. Hold on, we're having our tech person have to change this. Perfect. Okay, sorry about that, folks. So it's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Tom Szaky. I'm the founder and CEO of TerraCycle. And just before we get into questions, I'll just tell you a little bit about what TerraCycle is, and then happy to answer the questions that come in the chat window. So TerraCycle is a mission-based social business that operates in 21 countries around the world. I'm speaking to you from our headquarters here in Trenton, New Jersey. And our mission is to eliminate the idea of waste, not just to manage it, but really eliminate the very concept of waste. And to do that, we have a number of business units. Our first one asks the question, is that object recyclable? And if the answer is no, which is the case in many objects, from dirty diapers to cigarette butts to flexible food packaging and so on, we figure out ways to nationally collect and recycle it, again, across 21 countries around the world. Our second business model is not about making things recyclable, but about integrating recycled material back into objects. And there we focus on unique recycled materials that are not otherwise commercialized typically. So as an example, we run the world's largest supply chain on ocean plastic, where we collect ocean plastic all over the world, in every continent, except Antarctica, and then process it into high-grade plastics that end up actually coincidentally like products like this, which is the a Head & Shoulders bottle made 25% from ocean plastic. This is the one available in Mexico, and this is now in 15 countries, along with other products as well. Then our third major business unit is actually launching at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this January, which is all about moving from disposable products that consumers own to durable ones that consumers borrow and are always owned by the manufacturer, allowing really a huge upgrade of luxury, convenience, features, but also the elimination of the concept of waste. And then in closing, our fourth business unit is our diagnostic division, which has the thesis of, are there diagnosable samples in waste that, if diagnosed, could improve lives of people? Think fecal matter on a diaper. That could teach a lot about parents about the diet of their child, or saliva on an oral care product, or blood on a femcare product, and so on. That's what TerraCycle does. And I'm now going to start answering the questions. Thank you, folks, for putting them in the chat window. So the first question that came up was, how did TerraCycle get started? So for me, I'm originally from Europe. I was born in Budapest. Then there was still communist, of course, when I was living there. I was born in 82. And in 86, Chernobyl happened. That created an instability in the borders for about a day or two. So we left as political refugees. Ended up hopping around countries in Europe, Germany, Holland, Belgium, effectively, trying to gain status, very much understand the plight of the refugee, and then landed in Canada again as political refugees, and spent the next 10 years there, and came to university in the US, which is how I ended up in New Jersey. And for me, I was always interested in business as a force for change. I think business is the most powerful vehicle today to change the world. More powerful, I think, than war, politics, disease. But one thing that it really struggled with when in Princeton they were teaching business is they said the purpose of business is profit to shareholders. And while I think profit is critically important, I don't think it's the purpose, or at least for me it isn't. So I want to try to create a business that had a benevolent purpose and then was profitable. So purpose first, profit second. And I love the idea of waste. That's the topic we picked because, waste, everything becomes waste with no exception. The crazy thing is everything you own, which is in many ways how we judge our status in society with what we own, everything will end up in the waste one day and be owned by a garbage company. When it does, you will even have paid them at that time to take it, which is absolutely crazy. And for relatively how big it is and how everything becomes waste, it's a relatively uninnovative area. People don't want to get into the waste management industry. And so that's why I wanted to create a social business around the concept of waste, and that's how TerraCycle was born. The next question asks, what chance TerraCycle can start up in Switzerland? Here in Geneva, most plastic is getting burned. And so I'm first happy to say we've been operating in Switzerland for over 7 years. You go to terracycle.ch, I believe. Or if you want to get all of our countries, you would go to terracycle.eu, and you could see all the countries where we operate. So happy to say we've been in Switzerland for a while now. In fact, I'm in Geneva almost monthly, so just nice coincidence. And you're absolutely right. In Europe, there are anti-landfill legislation that means that most waste in Europe that is not recycled is incinerated. One of the challenges, by the way, in the DAC region, or Germany, Austria, Switzerland region, is that it is legal to call incineration recycling. So many times consumers don't realize that their waste is just being incinerated. They perceive it, that it's being recycled, when in many cases that's just simply not the case. That's very unique to that region of the world, and coincidentally Japan and South Korea. The next question that has come up is, what sparked my interest in topics like recycling and caring for the environment? I think really spending time in Canada. Canada is a beautiful country, where people really care about the environment, respect the environment, and that sort of became very important to me culturally, and sort of what I want to dedicate my working life to. And it's very fulfilling as well. I think one of the nice things about having purpose is that not only does it help open doors in business, allow you to grow faster, but it also is deeply motivating to work at a company that has a lot of purpose. And then, okay, if it's profitable, that's lovely, and growing, that's also lovely. But it's to me that purpose is so critically important. Bear with me here as I just look at the rest of the questions. Okay. Next one here. How did you come up with the idea for TerraCycle? For me, it's, we have about almost just under 300 team members now. And a lot of the inspiration comes from the people around here, but also in my life on what I would do as an average consumer to solve these types of issues. And so we're always constantly innovating and challenging ourselves on how do we bring more solutions to waste. So, it's everything from, we recently developed a global recycling database where you could type in where in the world you are and it tells you what is recyclable near you, all the way to our zero waste box division, which launched a few years ago, where consumers can access the recyclability of almost any object out there, to retail platforms. Today, over 100,000 retailers do in-store collection programs with TerraCycle somewhere around the world, whether for small objects like L'Occitane en Provence boutiques or Kiehl's boutiques doing cosmetics, all the way to Nespresso boutiques, and even large big retailers like Walmart, Target, Tesco, Carrefour, and so on. So it's all about constantly pushing ourselves and thinking about waste very, very differently. So the next question, what's the weirdest thing that gets recycled at TerraCycle? Well, I love the weird stuff, so I really appreciate, Tom, you asking the question, which to me, I love the sort of gross and nasty stuff, because that really shows, how far we can push the spectrum. Just a month ago, on that topic, we launched dirty diaper recycling in partnership with Pampers in Holland, in Amsterdam. And there you have these really cool smart bins that you can access through the Pampers Club app, and then find the smart bin near you. It generates a code for you that you can then use to open the smart bin, deposit your diapers of any brand. Even though it's a Pampers program, they're recycling any brand of diaper. And so that was a really cool one. 2 months ago, we launched chewing gum recycling in Mexico with Trident, Cadbury. And that's a really exciting one, also pretty weird. Cigarette recycling is now live in 11 countries around the world, which is also a pretty weird object. And these are some of the consumer objects. Here's a crazy one. Femcare recycling, like used pads and tampons, will be live in France early next year. I can't disclose the company, but that's a pretty unique one. And that's on the B2C consumer products. There's also, we have a whole division that's B2B, that's a little bit more unique waste streams from an industrial environment. Next question is, Tom, you are suppliers for quote-unquote beach plastic. Do you have a team for the collection? Great question. Yeah. So in our work in beach or ocean plastic, and I want to first start by defining what is beach plastic or what is ocean plastic, because everyone has different definitions. So I'll give you ours. We define beach or ocean plastic as plastic collected directly from the ocean, which is about 20 to 30% of the volume, collected directly from rivers, collected directly from lakes, or would have reasonably washed up on a beach. So that what I mean by that is if there's a bottle in a recycling bin on the beach that wouldn't have washed up, that someone just consumed it and properly recycled it or disposed it, that would not count. But if it was on the beach near the water and would have reasonably washed up, then it would count. And the way we do the collection is we have a whole team around the world that partners with local NGOs, nonprofit organizations like the Surfrider Foundation, the Ocean Conservancy. Those are large global ones, but also many local ones, to help them collect the waste, recruit people, but also then provide very much needed logistical infrastructure to be able to move the waste from a remote location to one of our warehouses, where we then manually sort the material, removing dead animals, fishing net, seaweed, all that stuff, and then through the science process, work with some large industrial partners like Suez and QCP, who then help us process it into high-grade materials, which then go into things like the Head and Shoulders bottle, or Fairy dish soap bottle, or Ren Clean skincare bottle, and many, many others. Okay, next question is, what's the number one tip you can give someone who wants to reduce the amount of waste? Stop buying shit would be the number one tip. I think recycling is not the answer to garbage. Let me just be super clear. Nothing TerraCycle does is the answer to garbage. It's the answer to the symptom of waste. But the real answer to garbage is stop voting for waste by purchasing things. And then if you really do need to purchase things that don't create waste, or are long-lasting and durable and reusable. But we, consumers, individuals, are voting for the future we want every day with money, multiple times a day, with the things we buy. Those are active votes, more powerful than your political vote, because it's made with money, and it's made multiple times a day. Is it possible to produce a kind of fuel with plastic waste? Yeah, absolutely. You can make fuels with plastic. So here's the hierarchy of waste, the best way to think about it. And this goes to Tom's earlier question. The very, very first thing to do is don't buy. That's the hardest. And I'm even a hypocrite there as well. I buy things, but it's by far the most important and by far the hardest, is to stop purchasing. Then below that would be buy used durable objects. Below that would be buy new durable objects. Below that would be buy disposable recyclable. And below that would be buy disposable non-recyclable. Those are way more important than what you do with the waste. That's the first part of the hierarchy. Below that would be, well, what do you then do? So the very best is reuse, then upcycling, then recycling, and then energy conversion. And then below that, landfill, and then below that, litter. Litter would be the worst. Now, energy conversion, there's two ways to convert into energy. One is burn now in like a power plant, like a waste energy facility, and then you get the energy now, or turn into a fuel and burn later. But whether you turn it into a fuel or incinerate now, it's identical. It's just a question of when is the burning occurring. Is it occurring in your car's engine many months later, or is it occurring in a large incineration facility to power your house now? Tom asked, zero well, where do you feel challenged in your everyday life regarding the lifestyle? Well, to be very fair and direct, I don't think I live a zero waste lifestyle. I'm really trying to, but I find it very, very hard. And the place I find it the hardest is the unavoidable. You get on a plane and they give you food, and there's no way to avoid that. Whether you choose to have it or not, that will become waste. That's a very simple example of unavoidable, but also it's the back of the system, the things you never see, right? So even if you think you're buying, say, apples, as I do, without a plastic bag, you could say, oh, that's zero waste, but it really isn't, because what about the super sack the apples came from to the supermarket? What about all the ugly fruit that was thrown out because they perceive I won't want to buy ugly fruit? What about the agricultural film that was on the apple orchard to protect against invasive species and so on, weeds and things? There's a huge amount of unavoidable waste, and that's very, very challenging. So let's obviously focus on it in the places we can, but do note this is a very pervasive issue. Next one, TerraCycle.ch is pretty non-existent though. You're absolutely right. So sorry, I didn't read the whole question out. It's just basically, the size of our business in Switzerland. It is quite small in Switzerland. And, it's so interesting. In Europe, our two biggest markets by far are UK and France, very robust platforms there. And then after that, Benelux, Belgium and Holland, and then the Nordics. And the countries we struggle in the most, strangely, are the DAC regions, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, even though we operate there. And the big problem is people don't perceive issues in those regions because they think that they have high levels of recycling. They perceive they have high levels of recycling because it is legal to call burning garbage recycling in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And so there isn't a public outcry. The joke is that it's actually not such high levels of recycling if you discount incineration. It's about the same as France or the UK. But in France and the UK, the people are skeptical about their systems and are demanding innovation. And this is what needs to happen. Consumers need to put their systems to bear and highlight that it can be better and demand higher standards. And that's very important because, if you ask an average person in France, do you think your local recycling system is good? They'll say no. If you ask an average person in Germany or Switzerland or Austria, is your recycling system good? They'll say it's perfect or it's very good. And that means that there's less forced innovation because the companies don't view it as big of an issue. And this is something we're working on, but it's not not an easy one. Next question was, is there any waste or material that absolutely can't be recycled? The general answer is no, okay? But let me not be absolutist. There are certain materials that legally are prohibited from being recycled. Maybe they can't legally be transported. Things like, these are weird ones, but say something like use lighters because they may have had lighter fluid inside that's that has could be flammable. Some of those things may be legally precluded. Medical waste many times legally has to be incinerated. So sometimes there's legal preclusions, not technical ones, but legal ones. And and sometimes, but super rarely, so much so you shouldn't assume that there isn't the technology to do it. Here's the bigger point, though. What makes something recyclable is if it's profitable to recycle for garbage companies, and what makes something not recyclable is if it costs more to collect and process than the results are worth. And so the way we try to solve for that is we get stakeholders, manufacturers, retailers, cities, and others to pay the economic difference and make it worthy for them to do so. Next question was, hey Tom, do you deal with a mix of many different kinds of plastics when it comes to the production of homogeneous material? Yes, absolutely. This is one of the key challenges, Linda, about recycling is that as packaging is getting lighter, and lighter, it is becoming more complex and lower economic value to recycle. So here's an example. Take beverage containers. When beverages first came onto the market, they were in heavy refillable glass bottles in the 1920s and 30s. Those were refilled. I'll give you US data because I happen to know it in my head at 90%. Then they moved to aluminum cans. Those are being recycled today at about 60%. And then they moved to PET bottles. Those are recycled at about 25%. Then cartons, those are recycled at about 10%. And then pouches, those are recycled at 0%. Now, it's not that these are harder or easier materials to recycle. It's entirely because there's less value per touch, per package to recover. And that's two parts. One is that there's less physical material. And the second is that the material itself is lower value because it's maybe mixed with other plastics and so on. And so things are actually going in the wrong direction. Recycling is declining globally for three macro reasons. One is low oil prices, which makes it hard for recyclers to compete. Second is China and other countries now like Vietnam stopping to import waste, which is a big end market problem. But third is what most people don't think about is that the actual quality of the input is going down because things are becoming lighter and more complex. Well, those are negatives for recyclers. Okay, next one is please walk us through the whole recycling process of the zero waste box that gets sent back to you. So this all depends on the waste stream. So important to note that every waste stream is a different animal. And in our ecosystem in nature, it's very complex. The way one animal is functions and what they eat is very different than what another. So you do have to look at each waste stream as a completely different animal. And so here's how we dissect it. I'll give you the high-level answer, then I'll give you a couple of examples. The first question we ask is, how do you collect the waste? Just to show you some examples, like how we collect cigarettes in cities are metal cigarette recycling bins that are deployed every 10 meters along busy areas of major cities, now about 400 cities around the world, versus how we collect, say, something like baby car seats are big cubic meter collection bins at major retailers. all the way to how we collect, say, contact lenses that are at optometry facilities or clinics in unique bins, all the way to razor blades, which are in sharps containers, again, at very unique locations. So the first is the collection. And in collection, you have to think about what is it collected in? What are the right logistical patterns to make sure to be able to transport that safely? But also, what will get consumers to actually do it? Because just because you have a bin that is safe and a logistical pattern that complies, it doesn't mean that anyone will actually participate. Then the second question is, how do we process it? Here we look at, first, is it reusable, which is the case in electronics, clothing, toys, high-value objects. Second is we look at, can it be upcycled? Like the office I'm standing in is all upcycling. It's usually pretty small volume, but high visibility. And then we look at the science of the waste on can it be recycled, which is where the majority of our volume is. We do a few million kilos a week of these hard to recycle materials, and most goes into recycling outputs, where our team of scientists looks at how do we take the material apart. So something like chewing gum, we can turn that into a plastic at 35% used chewing gum and 65% other recycled materials, all the way to something like cigarette butts, where we shred them, separate the ash tobacco paper, which gets composted, and take the filter, which is made from cellulose acetate, and make it into things like pallets and ashtrays and other appropriate products. The zero waste box model, Tom, which you ask about, then the third part, I apologize, is who pays the bill and why would they want to? This is actually the biggest and most important. It's the white elephant in the room. So once you've collected it, once you've figured out how to process it, the question is who's going to fund it? And that could be big consumer product companies who fund it to be able to solve the sustainability issue and get their consumers more excited about that product. It could be retailers who are looking to drive foot traffic. It could be individuals or businesses that buy zero waste boxes to be able to offset those issues in their lives or in their office environments, and so on and so forth. The zero waste box model, Tom, that you ask about, is all about giving the individual or the small company the ability to solve this, not just waiting for big companies to sponsor. Next question is also, is the capital raise still happening? How did it go so far, and what are the expansion priorities for TerraCycle? Yes, it absolutely is. We are raising capital by selling a third of TerraCycle US. Anyone interested in that can go to ownterracycle.com. Again, that's OWN, terracycle.com. This is qualified with the Securities Exchange Commission, so you can download all the information and be a part owner of TerraCycle US. And the minimum investment there is $700, and it's going quite well. Every day more and more capital comes in. I think we're just under 3 million raised. We're going to be running it throughout next year with a total goal of 25 million. And the use, really what are the priorities? One is we are focused on growing our business. We've had really great growth. TerraCycle globally, this year we'll do about 35 million. Last year, I think, was about 24. The year before was 19. And we think that next year will be even bigger, hopefully close to 50 million, give or take. And we are doing that with our existing businesses. We're also in the mode of acquiring companies. We bought a really cool light bulb recycling company last year called AirCycle, which is really neat. And we also have some really exciting new platforms launching, like our new reusable platform, which will be going live at the World Economic Forum in 1 month from now. Next one is from, when you see all day the amount of garbage that we produce, how does it make you feel? Do you get upset, or do you see chances everywhere? Well, it's both. I am so crazy skeptical that we are going to solve this. I think that the world is not in a good spot. And someone asked earlier, what should we do? All environmental problems, all of them, by far, no question, whether it's the fact that half of the species diversity we've lost in the past 50 years, the global warming, climate change, garbage, you name it, river acidification. It doesn't matter what environmental issue you want to point to, it is linked to consumption. Because by buying something, you are voting for extraction to occur. We are not, I don't want to say you, that's because right? We are voting for mining, farming, cutting down trees, you name it, directly and indirectly by buying objects. And everything is linked to consumption, and consumption is growing because it's also what equals our economy. And we seem to put economy ahead of sustainability. So I'm very concerned. I personally, this is me being skeptical. I think it's going to take a lot of natural disasters, a lot of suffering for us to really wake up. But I'm optimistic because people are waking up more than I've ever seen. The past 12 months have been phenomenal in the level of public consciousness, but it still needs a lot more to go, much, much more to go. Next question was, what do you think about the fancy zero waste influencers on Instagram? So one of them is a close friend of mine, Lauren Singer, who runs Package Free, and she has a really great platform based out of Brooklyn, New York. And I think it's any awareness is important to the topic, and it doesn't, however it comes across. That could be big organizations like the World Economic Forum, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, doing things where they're influencing big producers. But it could also be Instagram folks who are influencing the individuals. I think we should applaud anyone and everyone trying to promote zero waste, no matter how profound or trite we think it is. You know, greenwashing many times gets thrown around, and I think greenwashing is where you are lying, or you are saying something is greener when it isn't. Right? It's misleading. It's that sort of thing. But small projects shouldn't be criticized, and only in favor of big projects, because even big projects begin small. And to create a movement, everyone needs to be thinking about it from all corners. And I would really say we need to applaud everyone out there doing anything, even if it's very, very small. Next question was, what do you recommend that a person from Switzerland can do better? Do you have any easy tips? Yes. I mean, again, it all comes down to what we buy, because what we buy is what we vote for. And that's what I would really put most of the focus into, is how we purchase, because that's what we're voting for. And then if you want to purchase, support products that are helping bring about better, more responsible consumption. And another thing, stop eating meat. You want to do one really big thing for the environment: stop eating meat, full stop. It is ridiculous the impact that the beef industry has. Not even, forget the ethics of it, which is horrible, but just the environmental side, there's no justification for it. And you don't have to be absolutist. You could just eat a lot less. But I would say really focus on your consumption, because it's not just going to solve the environment from buying things that don't produce waste, or not eating meat products, and using alternative proteins. It's also going to be a vote to manufacturers to tell them to invest in different things, and look at business differently. So how you buy has a huge ripple effect. Think about it this way. Next time you go shop, for your favorite beverage at a store, imagine that whatever you buy, 2 more will appear tomorrow. And whatever you don't buy, which is also an active vote, not buying is an active vote, will disappear tomorrow. That's how powerful it is, and that's really what happens anyway. Very quickly, I'm going to answer this last question as we end our conversation from Sam. What are you doing with all the collected ocean plastic waste? It's a great question, Sam. So basically, we're turning it into consumer products with large manufacturers. Examples include the Head & Shoulders bottle, which is a shampoo bottle, made 25% from ocean plastic. Fairy dish soap, made 10% from ocean plastic. We're about to commercialize some other examples. And also Ren Clean Skincare, which is Unilever. They have an ocean plastic package with us. And then anything that can't be recycled into that, we recycle into other things like park benches and so on. Folks, thank you so much for your time. It was a real pleasure, and your questions were really engaging. It's a real privilege to get out to Switzerland, almost every month. I look forward to being there next month, not just for Davos, but for visiting Zurich and Geneva. And I just want to thank you so much for caring about this topic and for spending a half hour with me today. Have a wonderful afternoon.